What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast. Give us like 3 minutes. 3 minutes to talk about the new KBO signings that the Mets made. A couple of them. Trevor May is coming to you in 5 minutes max. We are going to talk about these guys. Got to give James 45 seconds to a minute to talk about Brandon Waddell. We got to talk about Jared Young. Where do you want to start first, James?
I think first one, just give me like a quick Brandon Waddell spiel.
Go.
Brandon Waddell, the last time he pitched in the majors, which is a few years ago now, he had 3 pitches that were above average in terms of stuff plus, including a high slot, high riding fastball from a lefty, which is rare. You don't see it every day. So I think that alone makes him a bit of an outlier as a starting pitcher on, I think it was a split deal or a minor league. I don't remember if it was minor league, major league deal. His gyro slider was nice and his changeup was good enough. And a big thing about when pitchers go to the KBO, they talk a lot about changeup development. I know Eric Fetty talked about that specifically as something that kind of defined his reemergence in Major League Baseball, going to the KBO, making his changeup better. His changeup was already good and the fastball already has that nice upward action. If he gets more depth on that fastball and kills some more vert, I think you literally have a guy with 3+ pitches who could either be legitimately a high leverage lefty reliever or a back end rotation starter, which is a great place for the Mets to shop in a cheap bullshit deal like this.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Anytime you're getting these guys, especially for how cheap they are for absolutely nothing, and they were basically playing in 4A baseball, always interested in that. Brandon Waddell is interesting too. He played for the Rakuten. I believe they're the Golden Monkeys, which is in the Chinese Premier Baseball or Chinese Professional Baseball League, which is insane. I respect a guy who's willing to just go anywhere to play some baseball and get the bag.
And it is a major league deal. Just double check. So it's a major league deal for Brandon Waddell, be in spring training with the major league team. I guess they're anticipating him to be another guy in the back of this either rotation or mix between the rotation and the bullpen, prove himself. And again, this is part of the Mets' new mantra with the front office, David Stearns, everything. We're looking for traits more than production now, which is the way that smart teams shop and operate. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also true with the other new Met, Jared Young. This is another move that just screams Dodgers to me. This is the Mets trying to find the next Max Muncy, where like here's a guy who can play all over the diamond, nowhere super well, hits the ball hard. He hit the ball really hard AAA last year, hit the ball 114.5 miles an hour. Had a little bit of a season 2 years ago with the Cubs, had like 2 good weeks and all kind of fell apart again. But it's someone who, again, the plate discipline isn't great, but you see the potential for actual power. And that's something that is important when you're signing a split deal for a guy who just spent half a season in the KBO.
And you said, I think, like at AAA, he hit a ball 115, right? So like
114.5, yeah. Just
114.5, so he hits the ball hard. If you look at what he's been able to play the last couple years defensively, first base, left field, right field, third base. So he's a corner guy.
We're trying to find Muncy. That's what this is.
He's, if you want to even keep doing the Muncy thing, he's even played second base as recently as 2022.
That's what I'm saying. And lefty bat. You always want a lefty bat for the platoon because you're going to face mostly righty pitchers.
Yeah, so he's a guy who I think when he got called up with the Cubs originally, I want to say, because my friend Antonio, who's a Cubs fan, was like, he came up and hit like 2 triples in like his first 2 games.
He had like 2 really good weeks. I remember I was in some deep fantasy baseball leagues. I was like, oh, I'm going to snag this guy. He has power. He has speed. 75th percentile sprint speed. He was murdering the ball when he had that first stint with the Cubs. I think he actually had some games against the Mets, which was funny. And
he's also a major league contract as well, which those things are worth.
I think it was a split contract.
Oh, okay. Split? Because on Baseball Reference, I'm seeing majors right now for him.
Yeah,
but
it could have been. I know there was some disputes over that. There was also another dispute on Twitter today over whether or not the Mets signed Alex Reyes. And it has not been resolved yet, so we can't talk about that actually. But
former
that would be a lot of
Giraffe Neck Mark, Alex Reyes.
Yeah, right? I played against him in a youth tournament when I was like 11, so that was fun too.
Dude was like 16 years old. I was like 14. I was catching a bullpen next to where he was throwing, and he was throwing like 98 as a 16-year-old. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so different. I was like scared. I was like, what if he throws a wild pitch and it hits me? I'm going to get killed.
Yeah, he was a big deal in Union County, New Jersey in like 2008. A huge deal.
Yeah, because he was at Elizabeth, got bad grades, got kicked off the baseball team. Shout out Mr. Belford, Coach Belford, for kicking him off because of bad grades. Kicked him off, quotation marks there. Went back to Dominican, instantly signed a professional baseball contract. So I think we know what was going on there. But we have a source off. So we'll see if Aram Layton's right or who was the other guy who's saying that he's incorrect.
Manny Gomez, who helped us with the Jorge Lopez translation last year when Steve Gelbs kind of ran with something that didn't actually happen.
Botched it a little bit. But enough of that. That's all. I told you. We're under 5 minutes here. I think that might have been 3:45. It's
Dodgers moves.
Yeah, Dodgers moves, KBO, Alex Reyes. Let's go talk to Trevor May now. All right, so we're now joined by former Mets reliever Trevor May. You guys see him on his YouTube channel. You see him over on Foul Territory sometimes. He's talking baseball. He stepped away, and he still can't get enough of it. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us. First off, congratulations. Just had a baby recently. How's fatherhood going?
It's the best. They say you change when you become a dad, and that is true. No, he's wonderful. He's sleeping well, thank God. No complaints. I mean, he can't move yet though, so I'm sure the complaints will come. But it's been phenomenal. Except the one thing, I love editing videos. It's always been fun, and I have not even opened my program because he doesn't want me to. So it's just, it's part of it. But yeah, other than that though, it's great, man. I get up every morning excited to see him. So
Have you been trying to get him to pick up a baseball in his left hand as opposed to right hand yet?
I always put it on his left side. He's got the grip of like it's iron grip. The guy's huge already too. He's like 18 or just under 18 pounds. He's only like 11 weeks old. So
Damn.
Whoa.
yeah, he's a big boy. He's definitely my son, and but I'm definitely going to do the Rich Hill and make him throw left-handed for sure.
You said you changed in fatherhood. How have you changed so far in your short stint of fatherhood thus far?
Well, you learn patience quick. You learn like to think about someone else a lot. It's funny to say that, but like, every decision you make or everything you're doing, especially when he's around, is like you factor. He's the first thing you factor in first, and then that's what's been interesting to me. But it's just like something just flips. I'll be honest. I've had this crazy anxiety my whole life about changing diapers. Body fluid grosses me out. I hate it. Like, oh my God, every time it was someone else's baby. I understand no one likes changing other people's baby, but I was like definitely like almost like aquaphobia type, like sharks in the water. I was just like, I can't do it. I can't lock up. And then the moment I saw him, I was just like, oh, I don't care at all. And it's to the point where like I kind of enjoy it. Mostly because he's the only baby I've ever heard of that loves being changed. So that's when he's the happiest. I think it's just because he can see us, because he can't see us when he's farther away. But he gets so happy to get his diaper changed. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm happy too, bud. But yeah, a lot that your mindset just changes. Just like what you care about. And then you can't really imagine him he being here, which is weird. I lived for 34 years before. And I'm like, what was that like? I can't even remember. Did I even have a purpose? Like that's kind of stuff that pops in your head just randomly through the day.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's jarring, but it's great.
Definitely unrelatable for us right now as some younger podcasters here in New York City. Big Mets fans, of course. A lot of things has gone on in the Mets world, specifically Juan Soto. A little bit of a zoom out here, not necessarily so much Mets focused, but how do you think the Juan Soto signing will change the league? Future contracts, extensions, feels like there's so much outside of just what it'll do for the Mets. What do you think it'll do for Major League Baseball?
That's really interesting because he might have broken some stuff to the point where, so usually have free agency works or or precedents are set. They're set to be broken. His is not. Like, there's nobody I think even involved, including Steve Cohen, including every team that bet for him. They're like, we're beyond on the field value now. We just are. There's just no way that you can be this much more money than Shohei Ohtani. You just can't, because he's got Japan. You don't have Japan. And so it became not about that at that point. So now what he pushed the ceiling into the stratosphere. So now everyone's going to be like, am I 80% of Juan Soto? Am I 60% of Juan Soto? And that's going to be a really easy case to make. So it's going to be really interesting to see, like, for example, Scott, what's the strategy? What's a new strategy Scott Boras starts using to get his $400 million guys $400 million bucks? Because you're comparing them to a portion of Juan Soto and what his production is. And if that's what we're going off of, prices went way up for a lot of guys. That said, if the owners don't pay it, then the owners don't pay it. So he might be it's going to be interesting to see how that works. But it's got people up in arms too. It's got a lot of owners thinking about how are we going to keep this down, because we can't be doing this constantly, because you're going to make, now the tier 2 guys are all going to be $300 million. And, the Rockies are over there like, we're not going to pay anyone $300 million no matter what you guys do. So you're just limiting the number of players we can get. And it was already limited. So deal with that as you will. So it's gonna be a little bit of infighting. I don't think there's a ton of people super happy with Steve Cohen. I don't think that the ownership group has been super happy with him overall, just because of he doesn't participate in the system like they've all been they built it that way because it serves them most, and he's kind of breaking it constantly. So we'll see what happens. But man, Juan Soto, man, he to be honest though, taxes, right? He needs a little bit more money to live in New York City.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know.
Yeah, right. I feel like this Soto contract kind of made the Shohei deal look like one of the biggest bargains, not in baseball, but even just in sports. Because, like you said, the revenue that Ohtani brings in otherwise, plus just playing two positions at a high level, it's hard to match that. But in terms of where this became from like a Mets Yankees bidding war, it was kind of hard to get past it. You spent a few years playing in New York City with the Mets. Did you feel this Mets Yankees dynamic shifting as a result of this Juan Soto signing?
Yeah, a little bit. To be honest, I was a little bit surprised when I went to the Mets how little that kind of rivalry mattered to the players. Like just because they don't play very much. So like, the Yankees like hated, the Red Sox way more than they hated the Mets, which they get that's a really old rivalry. But even like the Orioles, like they were like, we don't like the Orioles more than we don't like the Mets. So it was like that was a little bit like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But at the same time, now we're talking about we're going for the same players. Now that rivalry is, I think, flared up a lot. But I'm going to say this, and I'm, this might be some shade. I don't really care. I don't think Hal Steinbrenner's never going to outbid Steve Cohen. He's just not going to. I just don't think he's got I just don't think it's his personality. He's not George. Now it would be awesome to see Steve and George go head to head. That would have been awesome. If Steve Cohen was around in 2001, 1998, like, wow, that would have been a lot of fun. There would have been a lot of quotes in the paper from George, probably. But yeah, I just don't think it's just the way, Hal's just not that. He's not as strong of a personality. It's just not the same thing. So unfortunately for the Yankees fans, if this head-to-head thing happens a lot, it's going to go the Mets' way most of the time, if not every single time.
What does the Juan Soto contract do for the vibes in the clubhouse when a player like that, I mean, he's obviously incredible, but he's making just so much more money than Francisco Lindor, who is one of the 10, 15 best players in the league. He's making double his contract, which is absolutely insane to say out loud. Does that have any effect on the clubhouse whatsoever?
I don't know. I think that has diminishing returns a certain amount of money. Like, right? Like, yeah, Francisco made his signing bonus when the contract was more than my whole contract, right? So like, but like it wasn't like a hierarchy like that. He was a leader more than I was. I'm a reliever or whatever. I'm not the closer either. So it was just kind of the roles. But like, you do filter in, like, you're the highest paid guy, so you speak for the group a little bit more. And Juan's going to be looked at to do that a little bit more than maybe he's used to, or speak for the group, meaning he's actually I think he's really lucky to be on a team with Francisco Lindor because he's already got that role. So he doesn't have to do that stuff. He can just play, which I know he's a good person. I don't think that getting up and rallying the guys in a meeting is his personality. He'll do it. I just don't think he will search for it all the time. Francisco, though, he's built for that. That is very, very apparent when you meet him. So I think it's a perfect situation. I don't think it's going to affect them much. At this point now, there's these guys like the Nemos and the Jeff McNeils, these guys who've been there for years. They saw Scherzer come and get paid $45 million a year. They saw Verlander come and get paid for, like, they've been the lower paid guys on the team for the whole time. And to say that about Nemo right now is hilarious because he's making a ton of money. But like, even now, he's still just kind of peanuts compared to everybody else. And I think they kind of like it that way. So I think that the dynamics kind of stay the same. And he's going to come in there and be, I don't think there's more pressure on. I mean, there's going to be lots of pressure on him, but I don't think there's more pressure on him to be more in the clubhouse. I think but it is something that will be brought up a lot, and his ability to take some get off your wallet comments a lot for paying. Like, everyone's going to act like they shouldn't pay for anything ever again. And I tend to agree with him. I would have been the same guy. I'd be like, hey, can you get my gas for home, please? Because I shouldn't have to pay for anything because I'm on your team. But I think that's going to be the extent of it. I wouldn't be worried about it.
You came to the Mets that same offseason as Lindor, and you just said you were there when they signed Scherzer in 2022. Did you feel any kind of shift in the clubhouse between those two guys coming in? Did they, like you just said, immediately take those leadership roles? And is that something that is, and you were also that with the Athletics, like you were the highest paid player on the team as well. Is that something that is always completely taken in? Like, this is the highest paid guy. Like, now he is a voice.
Kind of usually. Yeah. Well, it tends to be the highest paid guy is usually the best player. I mean, that wasn't necessarily true on the A's, but because we were all kind of close. I was just barely the most. But they're usually the better players. They're usually the stars. So they already kind of have that role, even if they just were an ARB. And then you add in the fact that they're usually veterans too. They usually got to free agency. So they've been around longer. So that by itself, money aside, those guys are usually leaned on. So if you say, I also was the longest tenured player on the A's. That was most of, like, it wasn't money related. We knew, like, yeah, it's good money, but like it's like a utility infield, like it's a utility guy in the Phillies. So like, this is the first year ARB for the second baseman. Like, but Bryson Stott's going to get $7 million. So it's like that didn't come up that much. Like, no one had any money on that bus except for all the first rounders. So I just made fun of them. And it comes down to service time, I think, more than anything. I think players lean on that more. I think that's going to come up more.
Soto obviously coming into the clubhouse. Mets might be losing someone from the clubhouse possibly next season. Pete Alonso. What's your vibe on the whole situation with Pete right now? Everything that we're hearing is that he kind of has no market. The Mets seem to be very steadfast in that they're not going to commit a lot of years to Pete and a lot of money. What do you think that does for Pete, maybe just as a person even?
It's not great. Pete's got a good handle on this stuff, but like, it can be disappointing. Like, it's funny. He gets a lot of flack for like the lower production last year, and he still had a high productive season. I understand there's some a little bit of red flags in like ex velo and launch angle. Like those things were down. They were down a lot for a while. They kicked back up at the end of the year, but they were down for a lot. So that's kind of scary when you're going with a guy who's supposed to hit the ball, top 5 hardest hitters in the league every year, and then suddenly he's in the middle of the pack one year. Like, that's scary, especially when it's platform year. But there's a bunch of teams that need corner pop. I just think that first of all, first baseman, they just don't get paid like Juan Soto does. They don't get paid like shortstops or center fielders. They just don't. They don't age as well usually. They're usually bigger guys. They're usually power dependent, and they usually strike out. All things that he does. Not any crazy clip, but like just things that are not going to age well. And so that, is already hesitation. So he's already got forces working against him. So I think he's going to be fine. I think that the worst case scenario is he has to sign a half reclamation project type of deal with like opt-outs after years, and he can get a solid AAV and sign like a 2-year 60, 55, 60 with opt-outs after the years, and then like a mutual option on third year or something. That he might need to do that and like do the Blake Snell, go out and get another platform year, just to see what he's got. The thing is, he's a guy who wants to be where he is. He wants to be bought in where he is, and I get it. I wanted that more than anything. I just never got to do it. And I know he loves living here. I know he loves being a Met. The issue with that is when you let a guy who you had for 6 years get to free agency, and then you have to try to negotiate with him again, that almost never happens. I'm kind of annoyed with the Orioles letting Burnes go. Like, you had the in. He could have been your ace forever. You need one. What the hell are you doing? It's different in New York, right? They were going for Soto. I understand it's bad timing for Pete. Yeah. But if that reclamation project kind of deal were the thing he has to do, that is something he could do with the Mets. And I think it would be disappointing, but I think that he'll get an opportunity to reclaim his value, and still make, $25 million a year. Oh no,
he'll be all right.
Right. He's going to get that. It's just how long. He's 30. He's a first baseman. And there's just not as many teams looking to pay for that when they can go get a guy for much cheaper in like Paul Goldschmidt, who might just be Paul Goldschmidt of old randomly and will be cheaper than. So I think that, and he hasn't gone anywhere. So it's like,
Nobody has.
So unfortunately, the teams that need first baseman are just notoriously terrible at making a goddamn decision. I'm talking to the Mariners. Like, Pete makes all the sense in the world for them. I bet you they haven't even spoken. Like, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if it was like, oh, you're 10 times too much. And I'm like, what? Like, so that's the deal, I think. But and it's feeling that way. It's feeling like, remember Blake Snell? We're like, who's talking to Blake?
Yep.
It's spring training. What are we doing? And then he signed an opt-out every year. That was weird. I think Pete's kind of in that trajectory a little bit too right now, and it doesn't help that Scott's his agent, because teams assume he wants a 10-year deal.
Yeah.
It's just an assumption. So
You brought up Corbin Burnes a little while ago, and he's someone who's weird because, for all intents and purposes, he's by far the best pitcher on this market. He's been a Cy Young contender for basically the last 5 years, one of the best pitchers in baseball. And the pitching market seems to have schismed, where a bunch of guys signed immediately right off the bat. You got the big deal for Fried, the big deal for Snell, and now Burnes, it feels like there's no connections. Manaea, Flaherty, completely dead silent. What do you think it is about Corbin Burnes that doesn't have teams jumping in him the same way they did for Snell and Fried? And where is that line, if there is one, of demarcation between jumping for these pitchers right away and now playing this waiting game through January and February, which it seems like it might go again?
I know one big red flag, and this is something that we noted quite a bit on all the other things that I do last year, was just the way his strikeout rate was lower, and his contact rate was up. It wasn't hard contact. He was still getting guys out and going deep into games, but he was definitely like kind of feeling more like an innings eater than an ace. And when it trends that way, the same thing with Pete. Like, Pete still hit 30 something home runs, right? But like, if his velo average goes down 3 miles an hour, you're like, it's going to go from 30, what he hit 30.
I think he hit 32, 33 or something
34?
like that.
34.
Yeah.
It's going to go from 34 to 16, randomly one year. Like, that's what everyone's trying to avoid. The same thing with Burnes. They don't want him to go to a 6 per 9 K rate guy all of a sudden, where he's got to rely on, he's going into aging pitcher mode early. And he's probably looking for an 8-year deal or something, 7-8-year deal. And it's not profiling that way. Max Fried, on the other hand, is younger, is left-handed, and throws 80 pitches, different kinds of pitches. So, and he strikes guys out at a higher clip. And then, we have Blake Snell. Blake Snell's just going to, he's going to punch 12 per 9.
Yeah, Blake Snell's
like,
incredible.
I'm going to throw no hitter and I'm going to strike out 16. Like, that's a take over the game type of guy. And he's starting to kind of shake off that I only throw 5 innings thing too. The longer he's away from the Rays, the more he's going to be able to pitch, and he wants to. So like, people feel like he's an ace more than Burnes, which is weird. If we look at the results for the last 100 starts from both of them, we'll take Burnes every day. But like, people are afraid his dominance. They don't want to be holding the bag when the dominance goes away. And there were some trends that are concerning. But that said, I think he's fine. I just think, in my honest opinion, he threw too many curveballs. Or he threw too many sliders and needed to throw more curveballs. His curveball was better. His slider was hit more. And he threw a slider 30% of the time, his curveball 15% of the time. I was like, just flip them, man. They're the same pitch, kind of. So just throw the one that gets the swings and misses more for the strikeouts. He just was getting ground balls on 0-2 instead of swings and misses. Like, it wasn't a big deal for me, but you have to look really deep. So that's the type of thing I think that's going on with Corbin, and the difference with Snell and Fried. Then he's the only one left. So now everyone's like, oh, are we about to get in a big bidding war because he's the only one left in the tier 1? Everyone's like, who's going to start? But once it starts, it'll go fast. Or one day we'll just be, oh, he signed with the Cubs. What the hell? Or something. I just threw out a team. I don't think he's going to the Cubs.
They just trade Bellinger. I don't know if they're going to be spending that money on Burnes right now. They wanted to get arguably worse. But with the Mets and Mets fans in general, I feel like everybody is clamoring for them to get an ace. Obviously, from like a team building perspective, from the outside looking in, I'm sure from front office too, you love to have that frontline starter, that stopper. From the player's perspective, does it make a difference with how you guys feel in the ballpark, knowing that every 5 days you do have, like, and of course not going to be the Jacob deGrom type, but even Scherzer or Verlander or those guys that stepped down at one point, like, is that a noticeable difference? Is there a different kind of feeling when those guys are on the mound?
Yeah, definitely. Having a guy, if you just get one where you're like, we are confident there's 7, it'll be crazy if he throws less than 7, or less than 6, right? So you're like, we can count on, if the fireman, the setup guy, and then the 9th inning guy are all not healthy, healthy, but also rested, like, they're just going to pit. They're going to go to them and then they're going to hand it off. We kind of can see how this thing play out. Then you get a rookie, you're like, I have no idea. I could be up in the 2nd, be up in the 6th. There's a certain level of, like, anxiety that you don't want to have every single night. And that's kind of why a lot of teams that run that out in the playoffs and do like the bullpen thing, they run out of steam, is because it's so taxing mentally, on top of physically. to have to be prepared every moment of every game, and then just try to run the same pitchers out against the same team for 5 games. Like, it's just really hard to do that. But you burn out. So having a guy who eats it, there's a reason that Jordan Lyles hung around for so long. Is still probably hanging around. I haven't heard him signing anywhere. But you know, he's Joe Random on the show. Like, if you just make a character and just put average, like I mean, I bet he'd tell you that.
Yeah.
But like, he'll also throw 3 complete games randomly a year. So, and the bullpen's like, oh my God, he's that guy, right? They'll hang that 4.8 on him, and he'll throw 170 innings and 3 9-inning CGs, Ws, like that you need, or even a loss. He'll like just lose 3-0 and throw all 9 innings. Like, that's the type of thing you need. You need those guys. So having like a guy like Corbin, let's throw that out there for the Mets.
Be happy.
He's going to eat innings. He goes in the 8th all the time, and in the playoffs, he's our number 1. It's just,
yeah,
that's him. He's got it. Now let's see who filters in behind him. Then you throw Senga. Now the pressure's off Senga to be, you know, this like veteran guy who's figured it all out. He's still only pitched 1 year, really. So, and he had a lot asked of him in the playoffs, and I don't blame him for how things went. It's crazy that he even was able to pitch, frankly. So, but you add an ace, it's a big deal. But especially when it matters, you want that, because you're like, when we make the playoffs, we're in good shape. Not when we make the playoffs, we're gonna have to just figure it out. That's not what you want to be thinking. So yeah, you need a number 1.
The other side of this, David Stearns with the Brewers and now with the Mets has always kind of had this aura around him and his teams and the pitchers he signs. They squeeze more out of them. They just seem to get more. Like last year, the signings of Luis Severino and Sean Manaea, people just killed them for that publicly. They signed for under $30 million combined. And I know Manaea hasn't signed yet, but it looks like those two are going to get at least $150 million guaranteed between the two of them. Is that the kind of thing that makes it around the league and makes it around to other players and other organizations? Then how much trust does that bestow on players in a locker room as well, just to feel like we may have what we think are 2 3s and 3 4s right now, but we're confident that these guys will burst into 2s again like they did last year.
Yeah, no, the combination of Stearns and then Jeremy Hefner.
Yeah.
Because Hef's a guy who he sees the writing on the wall. He can see different perspectives on different things he can do. Like, I don't know if he's actually talked publicly about the conversation with Manaea and doing the crossfire thing, like how they came up with that. Just as like, it was just something, a throwaway thing, like a distraction technique. They're like, I want you to feel the extremes of these sides. Let's try this and play catch. And then he just started doing it on the mound, and then he became the crossfire guy. Like, it kind of just happened, like on the mound. Yeah. He was just playing catch that way. And then he's like, yeah, dude, we just did it so he could feel something different, because he was like, this feels weird. And then we made it really weird, and then it started to feel normal. That's the type of thing that working with Jeremy Hefner, like that's the type of thing you come up with. I can count like a dozen times him and I tried stuff like that. Changed my change-up grip once just randomly. I'm like, I think it moves good. And he's like, saw it on TrackMan. He's like, it does. I'm like, cool. We're throwing in games now. Like, that's how it worked. It's that simple. Once you get the trust going. And so you go there and you work with him, you trust him, and he trusts you very quickly. But making savvy moves, because those are reclamation projects too. A team that also does that really well, another alma mater of mine, the Twins.
Yep.
Right? They went Sonny Gray. Yeah, no, that's who I'm trying to say. Sonny, just resurgence again. Like, he just became dominant again. Pablo Lopez was good, but he went there and became really good, right? Yeah. Cy Young contender. Like, they just kind of get, even Paddock has gotten much, he's come back from his injuries. He's shown glimpses of being that ceiling. So they get their guys to their ceilings, or at least try to, health permitting. And Stearns with the Brewers was really good at that, finding guys who had ceilings and then having the developmental people around him to get them there. And the Mets I think the Mets already had the get them there, but maybe the Stearns was missing, who was the pick the guys that we can get the economically easily. Yeah. Like, it was the economics of finding those guys and then being savvy enough to get them through trades or through good signings for the team. And then you just go, and then Steve Cohen comes and goes, oh, by the way, you have infinite money. Like, so now, like, I'm just imagining David Stearns like, oh, like, this is actually too much pressure. I have what do I do? I'm used to like I'm used to having my spreadsheet, my budget.
Your budget,
and, yeah. And now it's like you're telling me all the toys are available. I don't know what to do with this. So I don't know how what role he played in the Soto negotiations.
We
but
want him.
I like to think about it. You won. So it's a really good situation. I've always been a big fan of Stearns, and then them grabbing him being a New York guy. He understands.
Yeah.
He understands the nature of the place. You guys Mets are in a really, really good position to continue to get better, but also just have a team that's sustainably competing and finding diamonds in the rough. So, and then for pitchers, to answer your question in a very long way, for pitchers seeing that happening, if you have to sign one of those 1-2 year deals, you were like a back and forth guy for another team, and you're going to get an opportunity. It's one of the places you want to go. The Rays have been that. The Astros have been that recently, where people are like, get me to the Astros so they can tell me what to do. The Dodgers.
Yeah.
Just tell me what pitches to throw. The Mets are becoming that one of those places. And that's a really, really good thing.
Yeah. No, another part of this is definitely the bullpen. And I think a lot of Mets fans got, for lack of a better term, pissed off last year about how many players that they walked. The Mets bullpen, one of the highest walk rates in the league, but a pretty mundane ERA relative to the talent they had, and how many guys were kind of showed up in that bullpen by the end of the year who were not even expected to contribute in any way in April, May, or even June. I heard you make a really cool comment on rates and barrels a few months back with Eno and DVR, where you talked about relievers and pitchers in general who weren't really afraid to walk batters and would just never put the ball in the middle of the plate because they knew how great their strikeout stuff was. And we saw a lot of save opportunities towards the end of the year for Edwin Diaz, where it would be a walk, 3 strikeouts or 2 strikeouts and a pop-up. So can you kind of give that spiel to Mets fans right now on not being so horribly afraid by relievers walking batters and kind of trusting that stuff as they get later into games?
Yeah. There's guys who have a really good, basically it comes down to this. You're more open to nibbling around the edge of the zone and missing and walking guys if you're not a home run, you don't allow a ton of homers. For me, if I put a guy on first, there's a really good chance that the hit is going to be a home run. It's like I gave up homers. The way I pitch, fastballs up. It's just it was the nature of the way I pitch. But like a guy like a prime example is Ottavino, right? I know he didn't have, I mean, he's 38, 39. He's been playing for a long time. It's you got to get your body going. But he's a guy who's always been like, I'm just good. Just like, if I don't feel good about my mechanics or something, I'll just misfire. Just because it's like, that's the worst scenario I could get. And I'll do that. And the more guys you have like that, Edwin's one of those guys. He has the ability to strike out 2 of every inning for the entire game or for the entire year. He's done it. So with that confidence, if he gets 3 out, he's like, all right, let's not take any chances here, leave something down the middle because I throw 2 pitches. So I'm just going to walk a guy for 4 straight. Get through it. I actually looked this up recently, not too long ago. I think I mentioned maybe in that episode about the difference between myself and Edwin and 3-0 counts and how often we come back to strike people out. And his rate was like 12% because he just walks people on 4 pitches all the time. And I came back like 50% of the time because that was I was like, no, you're not getting a free walk because I might give up a homer. He doesn't think that. So he's okay with it being a first and also taking second. It's not like he's quick to the plate either.
No.
So it's like,
very slow.
So it's like, it's just about how you see yourself being successful, and it works for him. So when it comes to Edwin Diaz, I mean, I understand, but like, it's not the best seeing guys get on base. But the thing you don't want to see is getting hit around as a closer. Like he won't allow himself to get hit around. So if anyone beats him, he's got to walk a bunch of, he's got to be off in order for you to beat him. And he's willing to do that. And if his command's good, you're screwed. It's just, you're out. And that's the way he operates. There's other guys in that pen too. Jake Demon's another example. He just didn't give up. He gave up actually more homers last year than he ever, it's never been associated with his game, giving up home runs, but he's willing to walk guys because he can strike guys out because he's so funky. The thing is just they didn't come back and strike the guys out as much as they needed to with all those walks. And it was too many, but there is such thing as too many. But what you don't want is everyone in your bullpen giving up 12 hits per 9. Like Correct. That's because they're not going to get anyone out. You want it to be you win or you beat yourself and then they beat you, not the other way around.
Kind of like that. I like that. I like the way I put in that. Like you beat yourself and then they also have to still beat you. Yeah.
You have to go through all those steps before they beat you.
Yeah.
But you have to beat yourself before they can beat you. That's That's what Edwin Diaz does.
That's the Mets bullpen to a T. Like, that is exactly it. You are on the edge of your seat because of the walks, and then all of a sudden at the end of the day, you're like, oh, they won this game. I don't know how they did it, but they ended up winning it. Like, yeah, the deep breath.
Just ask anyone who's been a fan of Craig Kimbrough's teams for the last 5 years. That's
Yeah.
very much how he operates. But remember when he was prime Kimbrel?
Oh,
that dude just threw exactly where he wanted every time.
Unbelievable.
And he's just older now, and he can't do that as much. But he's still nasty. He just walks more.
It was K-Rod too, all the time. It was, I don't know where the ball's going, but when he's on, you're not even near the ball.
It's almost like the best relievers ever.
Dominant. Yeah. Absolutely.
Last thing, I don't know if you got to take a full look at that study MLB just released about velocity and injuries. Did you get a chance to take a look at it at all?
I didn't, but I'm fired up for this to get over so I can go read it.
I mean, yeah, of course, the classic thing, velo, spin rate, chasing velo, chasing spin rate, unbelievable. And one of the big things that did stand out was the fact that more so at the younger age, at like the AAU club baseball level, we're seeing more and more guys throwing 95 plus miles an hour. As someone who made it to the major leagues, someone who did throw hard, what did you throw when you were in high school? Were you chasing velocity when you were in high school, trying to get to the, become drafted and make it to the pros one day?
Short answer, yes. The velo gun and getting really excited to see what the number is not new. It's just really accessible now. And we also have a much better understanding. There's a lot of different ways to get to hard velo, a lot of different places in the country that you can go to that will teach you how to do it and teach you how to do it get you to your max potential almost at 100% rate. Like, they're going to get you to wherever the best you are is. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing pitching's better now is because more guys are just getting their potential. When in the 90s, there was a bunch of guys who flame out who were really good, just didn't know how to use it. And now we know how to use it more often. And the tools are easier, more accessible, and there's more people giving them out and building businesses out of it. So it's natural. But whenever I went to a camp and there was the radar gun, I was yeeting that thing. Every single time I went to a big league game, I found the where's the speed pitch?
Oh, of course.
I want the big prize. Like, it was all. I've looked at the gun my whole life. I was a gun checker. I peeked every single time. I can't remember what Glasnow called it, but that's what a velo slut. That's what he calls it.
Yeah.
Yes. I look every time, and it becomes a stigma where you're like, oh, don't look at the velo gun. My whole career, I was like, yeah, I look every time. Who cares? Like, I care a lot. It matters. It's my self-worth is directly attached to how hard I throw. So whatever. I'll deal with it when I'm done playing. And guess what? Doesn't matter at all now. So it was fine. There was never an issue. So yeah, it is there. People always want to throw hard. It's a number you can literally compare it to other people. Like, it is human. That's competitive nature. It's distilled down to its simplest form. So of course, when there's other numbers, spin rate, break, how far can you get your changeup to seam shift? How hard can you throw your slider and have it break? All of those things are different numbers that we can just get better. Number go up versus other people. And then what happens? You stress your body to its limits. And when you're at max capacity, anything, you're not supposed to charge your electric cars to 100%. You're not supposed to get them to 85% or the battery degrades. Like, it's literally like that everywhere. So like, of course that's what happens. It's logic. Right? It makes sense that guys are getting hurt more. But it's not like hey, don't worry about velo anymore. That's not a real solution.
That's kind of
it's
where
always
I was
been
hinting
there.
At.
It's more like it's being purposeful about the other stuff that isn't velo. And then I think raising the value in people, like using velo as a part of the puzzle as opposed to it will get you drafted, which it still will get you drafted. But all of the arm care, all of the taking care of your body and getting yourself maximum shape, all of the game planning, if you do it up here, that stuff is going to translate. It's going to be multiplied in its effectiveness. Those things should also be incentivized. I don't think they are as much because why? We go to TikTok and we see kids slapping each other in the back and throwing as hard as they can into the top of the net. Yeah. And then that guy comes on, he goes, ball, that guy. So that's where all the kids are. That's what they're watching. And I get it. I make stuff like this too. I try to keep it in a way that's like, you can throw this hard, but you got to get there in your own way. But it is possible, and just be patient. but I don't know how you solve the problem. I think guys are just they're just going max effort more often, and that's going to get guys hurt more. And you got to make the decision yourself.
Trevor, as always, appreciate having you on. Thank you so much for joining us, talking baseball, talking about the Mets. Let everybody know where they can find all your stuff, and hopefully we'll talk again soon, maybe before the season starts again.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. You can find me on Trevor May Baseball. Yes, it is that simple. And I'm proud to announce that on this unfortunate date, so I'm just going to, I keep saying the first Monday in January, but it is January 6th. My show Mayday comes back with a whole new look in my studio. We got a whole rundown. We kind of refreshing it up, and got some really interesting partnerships that I'm going to announce when that launches. But that's a live show, and that'll be on my YouTube channel and on Twitch. I'm Trevor May. And then I'm Trevor May and everything else, TikTok, wherever else you want to watch the short form stuff, you can find it there too. So I'm everywhere.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Trevor. And thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll catch you all in the next episode. Peace out.
Peace out. Thanks, Trevor.